Okay. Welcome everyone to the webinar, Springworks, Razorpay X. We have come together to talk about HR People Ops Tech Stack for 2022, right? And maybe if we were doing the same topic in 2019, the conversation would have been much different. Let's see if that's the case. Couple of hygiene things before we get started. I see there are 84 participants on the call. First order of business is, we have a link here, which is a Slido link, where we are trying to figure out, what are the most important components of a people ops stack, right? And we have participants ranking them. We have 39 people who have already, finished the poll, waiting for a few more. Let's see. As soon as we hit 50, I can, show the results. And then we will go in that order, right? So while that is happening, let me hand over to the panelists to introduce themselves. So we have Rohit, of course. Rohit, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, once again, let me just unmute him. Yeah. Can you try? No? Oops. No?
Yeah.
Oops, wait. Yeah, try now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Am I audible? Yes. Perfect.
Yes.
Good afternoon to everyone. I think lovely audience. Thank you for joining in. Not Monday, not Friday, but yeah, it's a Thursday. So I think bang in the middle. Quick introduction. My name is Rohit Venugopal. I'm part of the business team here at Razorpay X Payroll. Of course, no introduction for Razorpay is required, but you would be surprised to know that Razorpay also has a payroll solution, and that's the business I'm part of. Um, I come from a mixed background. I started off as an HR, like many of you folks. I worked in startups in the HR space, and somewhere midway, about 5 years, I kind of decided that I want to work on HR tools. And I've been part of different startups in the HR tech space, working on tools across recruitment, core HRMS, and now Razorpay with payroll. So yeah, excited to kind of share what I have seen and how the space has evolved over the last 10 years, both as a user like yourselves, so all of you, and also as someone who's been selling this for the last 4 or 5 years to different stakeholders at different organizations. Yeah, that's a very quick intro. If you have any questions, I think we would love for it to be a very interactive session. So feel free to keep putting in your questions. And would love to hear and answer all of them to the best that I can. And of course, we also have Karthik, who is building a lot of these things in the space. So he will be able to give you more concrete stuff. So Karthik, over to you.
Hi everyone. Seeing a lot of familiar faces here, names and faces, I guess. So this is Karthik, CEO of Springworks. We are in the HR tech space as well. So right from applicant tracking to background verification to post-employee engagement and team bonding. Work closely with the Razorpay team in terms of how can we integrate and things like that. So today we're just going to talk about how does the current HR tech stack look for like a modern technology company in this year, and what are the different options, what are the different tools, how do you leverage them, when do you leverage, when do they stop working, when do they need to kind of be used, right? So kind of what size of the company, stage of the company, things like that.
Great to have you both, Rohit and Karthik. I think you bring very varied perspectives into this. Yes, Mahesh, we are recording this. This will be available to watch later. Great. So we have the results from the poll, by the way, and very obviously, payroll processing is number one. Then we have employee onboarding, including background verification, employee engagement. I, for one, would think if we had asked this in 2019, it would have been slightly lower. But let's see what the other panelists have to say. Then we have employee performance management, team communication tool, applicant tracking system, quite low. I would have imagined it would be slightly above in that ranking. Then we have L&D training, employee upskilling, and expectedly benefits management at the very end. To be fair, yeah, among these 8, yeah, probably the most nice to have rather than a must have. Cool. So yeah, now that the attendees have decided the order for us, of course, I wanted to go in the order of, hire to retire. So that would have started with applicant tracking system itself. But yeah, I guess the attendees have decided the order for us. So let's go with the first and the most important thing, I guess, which is a non-negotiable, right? You can't really do without a payroll processing system. And who better to talk about it than Rohit, given that you folks do this enable this for other companies.
Yep. Thank you, Abash. So let me just kind of again talk. I'm a little surprised that benefits is towards the end, to be honest with you. Somewhere I thought that payroll quickly gets followed by benefits, because some benefits are part of your payroll in a sense. Benefits is also probably somewhere very close to, I would say, employee engagement as well, in a sense. It's very closely tied in. Some of your engagement activities result in some rewards or benefits mechanism. So I'm a little surprised at this order. But coming back to payroll, I think, just a quick intro. Razorpay has a payroll solution, and one of the things that I want to talk about is how the payroll systems have evolved. I mean, if you go back, say, 10 years ago, there were payroll softwares then, and there are probably payroll softwares being built even today. But one thing that is probably not changed is the execution of payroll. And what I mean by that is that the market itself is kind of broken into 2 parts. Many of you folks here would be doing payroll for your own firms. And what you would end up doing is you have a system where you generate all the different files, and then you probably have a vendor or your finance person is given those files, and then you do 5 different transactions across, salary transfers, compliances like PF, PT, TDS. So one thing that probably has changed is two things. The first thing that changed is as SaaS products became more and more friendlier and easier to build, and APIs came into the picture. The first things that got integrated was probably HR SaaS tools and your IT system. So your IT person could, kind of get everything done. But over the last few years, with the change in fintech that we've seen, there is now another component in payroll softwares, which is the fintech element. And what I mean by that is payroll is actually about transferring salaries. It's about paying your employees on time. It's about paying government compliances on time. But today you spend probably 15 hours just preparing data, and then you kind of outsource the main part to someone else. So imagine a payroll software that could do end-to-end execution of payroll, including salary transfers and compliances and all things when it comes to compliance. For example, PF registration, right, for a new employee, right? So think about the kind of confluence of HR, finance, where your employee data exists. Can you get your bank portal? Is your HR software your bank portal with your employee data, right? Imagine if you could work out of your bank portal and do reimbursements for your employees in 10 minutes, right? So that is where things are headed, I would say. So look for systems that are doing a lot more than just calculations. Calculations can be done on Excel sheets as well. But when it comes to core payroll, look at execution and what are the softwares that are doing end to end. And again, surprisingly, Razorpay, of course, has a head start because we come from the fintech space. But I am expecting many other payroll softwares in the space to cover this as well. If you look at, apart from us, I can kind of tell you who else does this to an extent. You could look at someone like Zoho. Zoho payroll does, but they have one caveat, which is that you need to have an ICICI account or a specific bank account, in which case you will be able to, from the software, directly transfer salaries from your bank account, right? Instead of preparing a bank transfer file, for example. So Zoho is doing this. Great HR is again a very old player, and I think they also do this with ICICI current account. But again, this would require you to have a ICICI current account, right? So that's one limitation. And they also don't do, probably none of them do compliances, right? Which is payment of TDS, PF, PT, and ESI. So expect some of these folks to start covering some of these. They've started with transfers. Of course, Razorpay X Payroll does all of this without the need of a current account as well. You can load funds into your Razorpay X Payroll account, and you will be able to do all the things that I mentioned just now. So yeah, I think payroll is evolving very, very rapidly. I think fintech is come in very nascent times, but I think fintech's really going to take over a lot of your processes around transfers, and that's a welcome change in my view. Karthik, you've been running an organization, I guess, for a while. So, what are you? How have you seen from a payroll? What have you used? Actually, I want to hear that at Springworks. What have you gone through in terms of tools and process for payroll?
Meanwhile,
So,
sorry. Meanwhile, folks, please feel free to put in the chat. What is the payroll provider that you use at your organization?
Yeah.
Sorry, Karthik, go ahead.
yeah, no, so I have actually, gone through the complete, gambit, right? So started from, with a third party CA firm, like literally this is the Excel file, let's send it to them, and then, use like a maker checker process in HDFC, and then you have to use only works on like an HDFC, a Windows laptop, right? So you have to put in a key, put in a, USB drive, and then the CA uploads it from their side, then we kind of approve it from here, right? So started there, which everything, all conversations were on an email, on an Excel sheet, and there's no pay slips, none of that stuff. You have to kind of manually generate, and then the last few days of the month and the first few days of the month were always stressful. And it's always like, let's make sure people are paid on time, all the compliances are done, right? And from there, I think we graduated to like Greatip. After Greatip, we ended up using Paybooks for a while. It was more automated. And then kind of shifted to like a more HRMS, which kind of does a lot of this, right? So I think this is, as people are saying, like this is one of those things where you cannot go wrong, right? And now with clear compliances, and we've seen, especially in background verification, where we see that people have, the previous company has not sometimes paid PF, have not paid taxes on time, and that starts affecting, right? And sadly, a lot of people don't even know if your PF has been paid on time. If you're not checking it, I think the Indian government recently started sending out SMSs for PF receipts, but 3 years ago there was nothing, so you literally had to log into a system and just make sure, okay, you're getting it on time, the value is correct, and then most people only see at the end of leaving, and that's already too late, right? So this I think as employees also, we need to make sure we join a company which has these processes done well. Otherwise, there is always some risk, and then you'll have to kind of always kind of validate, and you can't go wrong here. The impact is too high, both from a fines perspective and also from a dissatisfaction of employees, right? So you mess up someone's salary, you say one thing in pay slip, one thing in to the government, or one thing in their bank account, like that person will never be happy, right? Will always have trust issues with the company. So this is one thing which cannot be messed up at all. And then there will be a lot more hopefully innovation in the future, right? Like payroll, mid-month payroll, every week, can people get paid every week? Can people get paid every 15 days, these type of things. So I think this will be very exciting, like will be in very exciting space as fintech revolution also goes on.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Now, given that this is a must-have sort of a product, right? I'm assuming baseline every product out there, and we have got a bunch of names on the chat window as well, which in itself is a good data to look at. I would assume, given that this is a must-have and compliance and all of that, baseline features would be the same, right? So for folks who are attending this, how do they choose one from the other? Like, what are some of the gotchas to avoid, some pitfalls that you should be looking out for? And if they are with a current provider, what are some of the things that you should be looking for as red flags so that you move to a better product?
Yeah, so I think we need to unmute Rohit. I think Amash, if you can make him a co-host, it'll be easier.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think, from my side would be, one is reimbursements. Can they do reimbursements, right? Because reimbursements are very, closely linked to payroll. That's how it is right now. Second is you have the pay slips, right? Are pay slips auto generated, auto sent, or have they, need to be done manually? Third is anything around taxes, right? So can you upload your tax reimbursement, kind of data? Can you declare your compliances, right? Whatever LTA, life insurance, all of those kind of things. Can you declare all the ATC, ADD, all of those things, in a system? So then the system automatically calculates what's your tax for the year, and what's your income for the year. And I think these three things are very, very important, and a lot of tools don't have this, right, as of now. So and if you change this, I think your finance team will be the happiest. Obviously employees will see the impact, but the finance team will also start seeing, okay, yeah, this is so much better. We just feel a lot less stressed.
Got it. Rohit, will come to you. Before that, I just want everyone to, share your organization strength in the chart, as in 200 employees, 500 employees, whatever. Ballpark figure will do. We are not looking for an exact figure. Yeah. Sorry, Rohit, go ahead.
Yeah, I think in terms of what people should keep in mind is, I think no one wakes up and says, I'm going to transform my payroll experience today, right? I mean, it's not something that people wake up to do. I mean, HR folks think about payroll starting 20th when they start sending that, please regularize your attendance, do this, do that, like follow-ups. I mean, that's when it kicks in, because payroll at the end of the day is a non-value added activity, right? I mean, you don't get anything from doing payroll. But it's a very important thing to do. I mean, employees, amongst there is a reason payroll is first on our list, is because end of the day, employees work for that, right? I mean, they're working to get paid. So what I would ask everyone to think about is, what is the experience that you're, forget about feature lists. I mean, feature is again part of software. You can keep building features, and good products will continue to add features. But one question that you should ask yourself is, what is the experience that is currently being given to people, right? Experience to the end employee, experience to the HR who is running the show, experience of the finance person, experience of the CFO or the CEO, right? And I can give a couple of questions, right? And if this resonates with, if you've been in any of these positions, you know that you can look at something new. The first question is, when you get a call from your employee and who says that I didn't get my salary, right? Visibility into your own salary, very important. Karthik mentioned about PF, right? How companies don't end up paying PF. There is a reason for that also. The second question is that if you join an organization after 20th or 25th, you might not get salary that month, because the HR has to send this data to someone else to add that person to the PF register, and then you get as arrears in the next month, right? But is there a software that can do all of this, improve all of this, give a better experience to your employees? And that is possible. And that is possible only when you start combining systems together. If your payroll software is not talking to your bank account, right? Or if they're separate systems, at the end of the day, you cannot link it, right? So you will never have visibility. But if they're happening from the same place, today a user on Razorpay X Payroll can open their dashboard and they will see something called as view personal transactions, and they will know all the payments that the company has made for them. When was my salary paid? What was the UTR number? When was my PF paid, PT paid, ESI paid? So this is a level of transparency that you give to your employee, right? The other thing that I would kind of ask you to consider is the experience of the HR. Today, or many of, I think 95% of the folks here would be running their HR functions, and they're probably owners for payroll as an activity. But payroll actually doesn't stop at calculation, right? Payroll actually stops when everyone's gotten their salaries paid, right? But that critical part is missing for HRs today. They don't have a visibility into the bank transfer itself, right? Is that something that I I know finance is the owner of finance, but HR is the owner of payroll, and somewhere I think that experience is not good, right? Because the employees call HR when they don't get salary, right? Employees don't call finance, but the HR doesn't have information on the bank account. So how do you make the experience for the HR better here, right? How do you give them more power to run payroll? Have access to, Karthik mentioned reimbursements. How can you do instant reimbursements? Why? I mean, I would like my reimbursements the same day, right? You take a vote, I'm sure every employee would vote for it, right? So that's again experience. How do we make that happen? So I would say there is plenty of software in the market today, right from Razorpay X Payroll to all the names that you have mentioned. Look at what are the gaps in experience you have today across your core user base, employee, HR, finance, and see what kind of gives you the most bang for buck. And I would say, as I said, many softwares are going to build feature wise, right? They will continue to build. So don't get bogged down by feature sets. Start looking at experiences, and features will follow.
Yeah. That's true for, I guess, of course, payroll. That's true for across, functions. Even for marketing, you come across a certain problem that you're trying to solve. CRM, your top 10, top 20 products in the consideration set will almost have the same features, right?
Yeah.
So there are other things that come into the picture. Great. Now, the thing is, I think from this sort of poll that we ran, it's very clear that most of the attendees here are sub 200 people organizations, right? I saw 1 360, 1 500, and 1 1500. And to me, then it's interesting that, to the poll, what are you currently using in your organization? Is it custom tools for every function or one HRMS that manages everything, right? And 58% of the attendees or organizations that attendees work at are using one tool for every function, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of the way which we should have started maybe answering that question. Which is the correct way to go about it now that we have payroll, right? So do you start looking for the payroll provider, and then if the payroll provider also happens to be an HRMS, do you just go with the HRMS, or do you horses for courses, right? Do you figure out which is the best tool for that exact function, right? So maybe for employee engagement versus performance management versus onboarding, right? What is the correct approach, especially now that we know what sort of audience is there in the webinar, right? Your thoughts, Karthik?
Yeah, so I think if you are a modern company in 2022, want to be employee focused, employee first, build an employee first culture, you kind of have to use a tool, a specific tool for each function, right? And it's just how it is, because one tool solving everything is just impossible, right? We just are not in that world anymore. It's not the world of success factors where you have an HRMS and they have 100 different features, and guess what happens is they don't do all of those well, right? They'll do 1 2 3 5 things well, and everything else will be like an add-on, right? And support is is generally a mess, and those type of challenges come up, right? So if and all of you will also kind of see the same feedback from your employees, right? And we are in that nature of multiple SaaS tools coming together, right? Be it work, be it HR, right? So that's where we are also at, right? So you have something for your core, which is payroll, say around all the compliances around payroll, reimbursements, things like that. Then you have something for background verification. Then you have something for an applicant tracking system. Then you have something for your employee engagement, performance management, whatnot, right? Right now, there is no tool which kind of does everything to an to the detail or to the user experience you would expect and your employees would demand.
Rohit?
Yeah, I think it as the organization grows. I've worked at big organizations. I worked at very small organizations. One of my first organizations was a investment banking kind of a firm, and you would be surprised that every tool was in-house built. There was a team of developers taking care of the applicant tracking system. There was a team that was looking at the leave management, and these are like top folks from IITs who were building in internal HR tools. And I used to be very surprised, but again, this is almost 13 14 years ago. There was no SaaS proliferation at that time. Plus also the industry matters a lot when we're talking about a financial investment banking kind of a firm. For them, security is super important, so they would prefer to build systems internally. And this is pretty much how things used to work till the SaaS explosion, right? And once SaaS explosion started, now you have as Abash said, horses for courses. You can choose intelligent tools that serve certain functions at the stage of growth you are in, at the kind of in the industry that you're part of, right? The HR tech industry probably is going to, as in some reports said that it's going to be worth more than $30 billion in the next 3 to 5 years, right? So, I mean, there is a lot of activity in the tool space, in the SaaS space to build for specific. I'll give you a simple example. There was this, until few years ago, the government used to allow Aadhaar data access to everyone, right? So there was this one particular company where they did volume hiring, right? They were onboarding close to 1,000 odd people every month. That means close to 300, 400 every odd week, right? And how do you do onboarding and collection of documents for so many employees, right? So they actually went for a simple fingerprint kind of a reader. When you key in the Aadhaar number and you punch in your fingerprint, it actually fetches the data from Aadhaar database and starts the onboarding process, right? Now that actually is a good experience for employee and the HR there to kind of get this done very quickly, right? There is no way a big HRMS provider is going to build that for you, right? Because they will have their own set of product features and roadmaps that they need to tackle. So that is one simple example. The other example is we have one customer who's very, very large in the edtech space, close to 4,000, 5,000 employees who use us only because reimbursements can be made instant, right? So it's a very important thing. Employees need reimbursements instantly, and we make that possible. So they're using us again because they want to give that experience to employees. So if you're in a growth stage organization, once you've sorted your primary employee data set and you're hiring, I think obviously recruitment is very, very critical. Unless you're, unless 80% of your hiring happens from internal referrals, there is no reason for your recruitment tool to talk to your, entire HR MS, right? There is absolutely no reason for that to happen because your recruitment tool is going to be used only by the recruitment team, right? Which is 5, 8, 10 people, depending on how you scale. Similarly, on the, all the time attendance stuff that we keep hearing, a lot of software companies end up trying to set up a lot of time and attendance rules because the software enables them to do it, right? I mean, just because a feature exists doesn't mean you have to implement it, right? And a lot of times HRMS products, that's the pitfall. There are 8 modules to implement and it takes you 6 to 8 months to implement it all, and then another 6 months to drive adoption, and then you've already paid 1 year worth of software charges, and in terms of actual adoption on the ground, your employees still don't like the HR software, right? Which is the reality. So
Yeah.
how do you make sure that you're giving the right tools to right departments is very important. And I think especially for a growth stage company, sort your recruitment out first, get something that does automated job posting, gives a great user experience for your for your recruitment team to use. There is a job board available, and then you're good to start and start scaling. Once you start hiring a lot is when your onboarding comes into picture, and that's when problems, you will actually start thinking of connected solutions. But I think, and that's also when you think that you need a connected solution. But I think if you just persist for another just a moment.
Sure.
I apologize. So I would say that as the companies grow, don't make that immediate jump. For example, I can talk about Razorpay. We've gone through 3 different ATS platforms over the last 7 years. It's none of them are integrated with. We are 2,500 plus organization, right? But the recruitment system is separate. Our performance management system is separate. Our payroll system is separate. Our employee engagement system is separate. It's not one tool, even at a size of 2,500. And that's because recruitment team takes their own decision. We are looking at, we've gone through Recruiter Box, we've gone through another product called My Next Hire, and now we are looking at something like Greenhouse under evaluation. On performance management, we've gone through a few. Keka was one of it. We've been working with Zoho. We also use another separate tool for OKR management, which is called X to 10X, right? So even at an organization this big, we don't use one single system. And that's again, put the power in the users, right? And because they will know exactly what is required. And that is the approach I would suggest. Go to your recruitment team, go to your HR ops team, and get them to evaluate 5 products and come back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is more of a shift from, HR being a support role to taking the responsibility for people operations and employee experience, right? Once, only if you go in with that mindset, will you sort of start thinking of the HR team as the product manager of the employee experience at the company. And if you go talk to your product teams or even marketing, sales, whatever, right, very rarely will you see that they use one single tool for doing everything, because that's the truth, right? Like, even the best of the tools, they will do two, three, five things, like Karthik said, very, very well. And that's the obvious reason why there are multiple tools exist in the market and all of them make money, because the smaller ones are probably good at one thing, and they do that very, very well. Which brings us to the next poll question, right? Which is, which applicant tracking system do you use at your organization? And that takes me into the seg. Karthik, we're talking about here recruitment, right? Plus onboarding. Let's take that together. Recruitment, and you hire someone. What do the first few days before onboarding, after onboarding look like? What are the things that you need to take care of? What are the tools that come into the picture at this point?
Sure. I think kind of Rohit outlined the reasons for why do you need an ATS, and I think having an ATS too early also does not make sense. You have a team of 10, 15, 40 people. We one recruiter, then you probably can live without an ATS. Do it in Google Sheets type of thing.
Yeah.
You probably are actually much better off, right? But the moment you graduate, from that, and you want to collect feedback, you want to schedule, interviews, you want to automate job posting, you want to collect resumes in one place, give the visibility to the person who has referred, add in agencies, external agencies, and they have the visibility of where is their candidate in the process. Those type of things is that's when you need an ATS, right? So it's almost like start without an ATS, and then have the need come when when basically things start breaking, right? And if you introduce an ATS too quickly, then like, oh yeah, this is way too many bells and whistles, and you're actually not focused on the job then, right? So then you end up doing what Rohit is saying. Just because you have a feature, you end up implementing that, right? So I think that's from an ATS perspective. There is Spring Recruit, which is a free forever applicant tracking system. There is and on the other opposite spectrum, there is Greenhouse and Lever, both international, from the US, more on the more expensive, but they kind of come with all the bells and whistles in terms of diversity, inclusion, multiple different job boards, Chrome extensions, all of those things, right? So I think there's a wide spectrum of ATS tools. So you just have to figure out what works for you, what are the different features you need, what are the non-negotiables, things like that. And once you've hired a person, I think that's when it kind of connects to your HRMS, right? So you've offer the person, you want to kind of add to your HRMS either on the day of joining or before, right? And this is a problem a lot of us have faced, which is how do we improve our offer to joining ratio, right? Which is exactly what kind of pre-onboarding comes up, right? And the last 2 years have been very bad now because of the explosion in tech and startups in India. So how do you kind of improve this? The multiple solutions there, and one of them is just better engagement, having a tool for that, just understanding, okay, where is this person in the process, how many days is it for to join the company. And that's why background verification also kicks in, right? A lot of companies use do background verification before joining, some do after joining as well, right? So you can just have to figure out what makes sense for you, and it's also a way to kind of engage the employee, start the process early, kind of hit the ground running on the day one, so you not bogged down by the compliances and the documents to do, right? One of the metrics we maintain internally, like it's a turnaround time for HR, right? So how many days does it take for the person to do the first task, right, to execute the first task from the days of joining, right? For an engineer, very easy. What is your how many hours or days does it take for your first commit to go to prod, right? Or for someone else, okay, this was your task defined, how many days, hours does it take for you to do this, right? And that's completely in the HR side, right? How can you set up onboarding calls? How can you set up manager calls? How can you set up buddy calls? How can you collect all the documents before the day of joining? How do you kind of stagger the onboarding process itself, training, all of these things, so the person hits the ground running, and that's an important productivity metric. And you start something well, you kind of have that flow right from day one. So that's where Spring Verify also comes in from a background verification perspective. There are other tools in the industry, but it all boils down to the user experience, candidate experience, and you want the best possible candidate experience. You don't want candidates to go through a 10-page long form, go through like a form on which is not optimized, which is asking for too many details. It's not built well. So I think those type of things are really, really important. And from the day of joining is where onboarding starts happening, right? So in terms of how do you engage the employee right from day one, and then finally the same metric, how many days does it take for the person to execute a task which is predefined, right? And if you can, that is one metric everyone should try to reduce and work on. Yeah, Rohit, over to you.
Yeah. So one thing on BGV, I think one thing that is unsaid, but want to just, I hope everyone obviously gets it. The biggest advantage of all of these SaaS tools obviously is saving time, right? I mean, and if you look at just BGV as a problem statement, how it used to get done versus how things have changed there. I mean, something with even what Spring Verify does, a lot of it is automated. But the way it used to work, of course, was not that. I mean, you had to give physical. There was an organization where I had to, uh, you know, take photos of the front of my house and the back of my house and whatnot to kind of produce as documents. So needless. I mean, the point is that time saving is by default, but more than time saving, it's also the tech progress, right? I mean, when it comes to Spring Verify, some of the stuff that they're trying to do is super awesome. I mean, imagine if you don't have to do verification eh, as an employee every time. And again, talks about experience for me, right? As an employee,
Yeah.
every time I join an organization, why should I submit 10 documents to every org, right? Why can't it happen automatically? And that's something that Spring Verify helps organizations do. So there is a lot of movement in the tech, obviously, but time saving is very important. And the way the number of companies that are getting built in India, especially even in the SaaS space, compliance, and we are no longer just consumers of software like back in the day, right? Today there are softwares being built out of India which are used across the world, and once you start selling across the world, you need to follow a whole bunch of compliances, and when you start having to obey these compliances, BGB becomes a very important part of your SOC compliance and all of that. So I think it's very critical if you are in a high tech software selling across the globe. BGB is very, if you're dealing in certain industries, even in India, which are regulated, I think BGB is a must, and something that will really automate it for you and provide a better experience is probably what you should be going for, in my opinion. Again, it's a very broken space. I know of a few vendors from quite some time, but there are hardly any people who are doing this with a tech first approach. Springworks is one that I've followed for the last 3-4 years for sure. But apart from that, I haven't come across anyone in particular. I mean, Karthik, you would know probably, but yeah.
Yeah. No, and I think one of the things that I wanted to mention was, a couple of questions around candidate ghosting and, how do you keep them engaged before the onboarding? I think some of the things that we do, of course, we do also every once in a while get this challenge, right?
Yep.
But I think the WhatsApp group that we use,
Yes.
right? So it doesn't always have to be a fancy tool. That was the point that I'm trying to make. It's as simple as, we create a WhatsApp group with the person who's going to join maybe 2 weeks from now. And we put in that group, a bunch of people, right? So the reporting manager, someone from the HR team, in our case, Karthik is also part of those groups, and we start engaging, interacting with them even before they have joined. So yeah. Which
add
is,
like a buddy,
yes.
Just there, like add like a buddy, an existing employee. Just sometimes if you join a company, especially in today's world, hybrid, remote, whatever, right? You are you getting all these things from the HR, and you're like, okay, this is a lot of paperwork, documentation, whatnot. Then you're getting tasks from manager. You don't really have a friend, right? So the buddy is supposed to be the friend in terms of just, okay, who do I go for this, right? I have a question on my on this task. I don't think this is, I'm not able to understand this. Who do I go, who do I go to, right? I'm not comfortable asking my manager as of now, right? So those type of small things, I think just important to have like a buddy type of thing. But again, as Abash was saying, like onboarding is one space where actually there are not a lot of tools in the industry. I have not really come across tools, and hence I think like onboarding is a bunch of tasks, and how do you automate is basically like project management, right? Some of it you can just do with WhatsApp and email and whatnot, and having templates. But yeah, the can offer to joining ratio is something very important, right? If one person does not join, it's a loss of the time from the recruiter, from the interviewer, from the opportunity cost. So this is something a lot of companies have spent a lot of time working on. But yeah, I don't think there's any easy answer there. It is, and no one really is at 100%, right? So
Yeah.
it's not an easy thing, and money is not the answer for sure, right? It's and sometimes it's like, okay, let's just get to know this person is not joining us early, right? It's not even getting a yes, but getting a no is sometimes better, right? Because then you can go work on an alternative.
Karthik,
Yeah.
quick question out of curiosity.
Mhm.
Do you folks send the welcome goodies, joining goodies, pre-joining or post-joining?
Yeah, so we do a staggered approach. So one is on the day of offer letter, right? Then there is 1 week before the joining, right? So it's, and then there is something on the day of joining. So it's on the day of offer, 1 week before joining, so -7, and then on day 0.
Okay, so they do
And
get something just
Something
around
even
yes,
just
before.
when.
Yeah.
Got it, got it. That's an interesting insight because many people might skimp on that and wait till the candidate joins. So
Yeah.
that's
yeah.
interesting.
And I think purely from a HR angle, right? Like, okay, if I'm spending 1,000 rupees on a kit, and you're sending it to a person on the day of offer, it's a preemptive way to figure out if this person is even interested. Simple, right? It's if the person does not join, all you lose is 1,000 rupees, and that's your own swag, right? It's not a random thing, right? Like, it's, you're still getting company branding there. So purely from a financial angle, way to justify costs is, yeah, can I spend 1,000 rupees to improve my offer to joining ratio by 10%, 20%, 30%, right?
Yeah.
Everyone would just say yes, right? Because
Right.
the cost of a person not joining is in lakhs, right?
Yeah.
If you
Absolutely.
calculate the time and everything.
I see a couple of raised hands. We will take all the questions at the end, but you can also share the questions in the chat, right? So you don't necessarily have to ask them on video. Of course, we would love for you to ask it on video as well. Cool. Now we have the employee onboarded. We have figured out the stack till this point. The next order of business is, of course, how do you keep the employee engaged? How do you, of course, not initially, but after 3, 6 months, 12 months, depending on what sort of cycles you have to do performance management. Yeah, so we get to the next order of business, which is, and now we are going in order, is employee engagement. And not very surprisingly, it is, yeah, according to the poll also, people rate it quite high in terms of importance, and that is all because of the context of the past couple of years, I guess. And one of the challenges being the great resignation, great reshuffle, whatever, as well. So employee engagement has come to the fore. What are the sort of tools that we can use to solve for this, Karthik? Or
Let me go
I
first.
mean,
Yeah.
sure, Rohit, yes.
Because I think I have one important point here, right? Because I've been in this space. One of the things that I used to do was every week we used to have something called as "Hey, hey, it's Friday," right? It was
Yeah.
the weekly kind of engagement activity that an HR runs in the org. Very simple stuff we used to do, and physical time. I would send out a Google sheet, and people could request for songs or karaoke songs, and we used to have a mic and. I would just announce that this dedication is just like an RJ, right? There's a dedication. There would be a bunch of snacks, and we would have a few games and stuff. So this is like long time back, and It was always, it was easy because people were there, you could communicate, you could talk, there is some engagement that is happening. But what I have seen, especially, and these are not tool based, right? These are personal based. Especially on the tools, what I've always found challenging is adoption, right? People don't end up using. I mean, you can run n number of NPS surveys, you can ENPS surveys, you can do all of that, but it's just, I don't know if employees don't want to, or it's just that they look at it as a chore. So one thing that I have seen, or we try to do at RazorPay Payroll is, I know that no one wants to log in and access their payslip, right? No one wants to log in and apply for a reimbursement because for them it's an HR tool, right? So we've tried to work within where they work, where the employees are, right? So today most companies use Slack, or pretty much everyone use WhatsApp. So we've tried to do a lot of our engagement with employee users where they sit out of, and that's something that you could start thinking about. And I think Karthik and Springworks are working on things that work directly inside of where employees are. So if instead of going for the, if you're doing anything uh, virtually or kind of tool based, I would say look for tools which already is familiar for your employees, rather than looking at a new tool. And that is where products like again Springworks and all of them come in, because they work right out of Slack. So yeah, Karthik, want to hear from you. Why did I actually have a question? Is, does engage with that you have, does it work only on Slack, or is it outside of Slack as well?
Yeah, so it's on Slack and Teams, and we
Perfect.
strongly believe that that's where work happens, right? So
Yeah.
Slack and Teams are the new digital headquarters, for everyone. Doesn't matter if you're remote, in office, hybrid, whatever it is, right? That's where your work happens, and recognition is one of the three reasons why a person leaves, right? So I strongly believe money, financial factors, right? Salary, compensation, whatever. That's first. Second is growth, company growth, manager growth, personal growth, career growth. And then third is the feeling of recognition, impact. The first two are not an HR problem, right? Let's be honest. HRs are not able to fix it. That's more on the company, that's more on the management, right?
Yeah.
But the third is completely an HR thing, right? How do I make sure that employees are recognized? How do I connect the employees' day-to-day work to the company's goal, which is OKRs, goal setting, things like that? How do I make sure they're getting the feedback when they want, where they need, right? Not at the end of the year. It's not that the recognition is only once a year, once a quarter. And the recognition is a boosting thing, right? Like we are in the world of Instagram, right, where we post something, we get instant likes and instant gratification, right? You want the same thing to happen at work, right? Why can't that happen at work in the same place where you work, right? And you want to be able to brag and post about it. And most recognition tools will you'll give a kudos and will stay in that HRMS where no one will ever visit and see, oh, Rohit just got recognized, right? You want to be able to see that in the place you work, which is Slack or Teams, right? So those type of things really help. And when people are able to see the impact, people are able to see that they are being recognized, their hard work is appreciated, then generally the output is higher, retention is higher. Again, how do you justify the cost for any of this is retention, right? What does it mean for one, if I can improve my retention from whatever 90% to 95%, how if I reduce my churn by like 10%, you're probably saving lakhs, right? In terms of, again, opportunity, recruitment, training, all of those, right? And that's where all of these budgets come from. And you keep strong KPIs, right? If you're not meeting that, then you reevaluate. So I think employee recognition, employee engagement, HR team bonding activities. Almost everyone has done Zoom chai calls and coffee meetup, Friday coffee calls, chai calls, whatever it is, right? And those die off very quickly, right? You see, first week you will see 50%, second week we'll see 40%, then 30%, and 20%, and it kind of dies off at 10%, and the same people end up joining, right? Because people have so many things to do, they don't want to join one more call. They've already been in calls all day, one more call to have fun, right? And a Zoom call with 50 people, you can't have all 50 people talking. You'll probably have only 3-4 people talking, right? So how do you do that? You have to rely on tools. You have to rely on places. You have to be contextual. Use we have trivia. Use kind of quizzes. How you have a new person join, do a quiz on that person, right? Like you can just ask, okay, what's your favorite food? Where are you from? Where did you work? Those type of things. Do a quiz on the recent funding round. Do a quiz on the recent product launch, right? Get people to kind of engage, and you can get to 40-50%, 55% engagement rate, which is very, very good, especially in a remote hybrid setting. So I think that's where, again, you can do all of these without tools. You can do with Google Sheets, something as small as like a Pictionary, or send a send a poll, or like an email type of thing. So you can get those type of engagements done, and people start seeing the benefits, right? If you're able to if at work you're able to find one or two people who you're able to resonate or connect outside of work related activities, that solves your retention problem there, right? Like because that's where the loop starts, right? You get to know one person, that person connects you to someone else, and that's where you start getting and that's fine. Like no one needs to make company size is 100. You don't need to make 100 friends, right? You need to make 1, 2, 3. That's enough, right? So I think that's where the KPIs also need to be defined well. A lot of times we are like, oh, we need 100% engagement, we want everyone to have friends. That's not happening, right? Like you have to be realistic about these KPIs.
I just want to highlight one thing that again Karthik mentioned, which is very, very important. A lot of HR folks may agree with it, but may not mention it, which is that if 55-60% engagement is good. And I think you will find tools, you will find marketing collateral, which gives you all sorts of numbers. But I think this is in my experience, it's 55-60% is quite cool. If you can continue that month on month, if you have that engagement, you still have a few things that you need to watch out for and solve, but at least your bulk of your employees are catered to. And I think that's a good highlight, Karthik, because all sorts of employee engagement is, 100% engagement, 80% engagement. People say all sorts of numbers, but I think it's good to hear from you that and it's in my experience that's what I've seen as well.
Yeah, I think Purnima made a good point that when you talk about this context, it gets boiled down to team activities, fun activities and such, but employee engagement is much more than that. And do you take regular feedback from employees? Do you can run pulse surveys? Is there a ask me anything sort of a portal where people can anonymously ask their doubts, solve their challenges, which they probably can't go to their manager for, which is again a separate problem altogether. But yeah, employee engagement is a bunch of these things. And Mahesh was mentioning what are the best benefits offered to employees to retain, and of course we will go to benefits management side of things, but I think employee engagement is a great way of employee retention itself, right? If you are able to keep them engaged in terms of are you taking the feedback, are you doing something with the feedback, right? Like taking feedback, yeah, there are a bunch of tools that will just have sort of this complaint box or whatever you want to call it, but do you actually execute on that feedback, right? So that sort of stuff becomes very, very important as well. Cool.
Just about
yes,
one
please.
last thing, I think one thing that I've seen even at Razorpay work quite well is doing periodic eNPS service.
Yes.
Just like how in SaaS business products we do NPS of our customers, I think if you've never done an eNPS survey within your organization, I think you should definitely do it. It's not very complicated. It's about 8 to 10 questions that you can get, and you will be able to at least baseline how your employees feel about your organization. You will also be able to run something, and once you do this, you will be able to run manager NPS as well. So you will understand how your mid-level managers are being perceived across your employee base, and these will act like at least some sort of marker for you to improve. If you're not measuring these, then it really comes down to other things, right? Like how many people turned up, how many people ate, how many pastries did we order. things like that. So I would say baseline your ENPS, MNPS scores in the org, and then you can come up with different activities to improve that.
Yeah. Well, by the way,
Yeah,
you
and
can use Engage with to run an ENPS if you are on Slack, right? So that is definitely something which is possible. What we will do, Rohit and Karthik, is, performance management itself can be like a 3-hour webinar. So we will quickly just talk about some of the tools, right? And by the way, folks who are attending, right, we would love for you to know from you, which are the performance management tools, if at all, you're using. I would assume that very few organizations use like a proper performance management tool, right? If at all you're using, and do let us know if there is no PMS tool being used, right? That is also a good answer to just get a hang of it. But some 3 recommendations or 3 names that you would like attendees to consider when it comes to performance management. Again, we will not talk about the concept itself, very vast, but Karthik, your 3 recommendations.
Yeah, I would be like, Keka, that's what we use, and then Google Sheets, and then finally, Lattice, right? So I think Google Sheets kind of works for most use cases.
Yeah, Lattice first is what I've heard a lot of tech high growth companies use, works right out of Slack where your employees work, which is very important. Apart from that, again, I've seen some of the other performance tools in HRMS products, but I still feel that they're not probably up to, they all follow some of the older ways of doing things, right? Which is your behavioral competencies and role competencies, and put out things like a bell curve or 9-box model. All of that is good, but I think the newer trend, of course, is more from the OKR perspective. So you will find a lot of OKR management tools as well, and that's an important. It could be important in a way. If you're not doing performance management today, you could start with OKRs, and that can get you started on your way to building or implementing a good performance management tool. Because performance management tool, obviously, it's very complex. You will have to have a proper skill matrix. You will need to know all your employees. The idea of performance management actually is kind of not really understood well when you do this, because
that's why I said, this will become a 3-hour webinar if we get into that.
It's not about evaluating your people. It's more about finding who needs what. Even if you look at any hire to retire kind of a model, so immediately after performance management comes learning and development, right?
Correct.
So performance management is your process to understand your skill matrix in your organization, map who is where and what is required to move one person from competency X to Y, or how do we build out a path for different roles in the organization, right? It has very less to do with individual performance, although that is what it has become largely, right? So the way I would suggest, if you're not using any tool, is start with an OKR framework. X to 10X is something someone has mentioned in chat. That's something that you could look at. There are multiple other tools as well. Google Sheets also is, very, very.
Google Sheets is the competitor for every SaaS tool out
for
there,
every
right?
SaaS
Excel, Excel is, but now, in the world of Google, it's Google Sheet. By the way, which team communication tool do you folks use? Attendees, I'm asking, right? So we use Slack, by the way. I'm guessing there would be people who use Teams as well. Oh, wow. Lot of Slack. Yeah, that makes sense, because the sort of audience that we have, right? Like sub 200 employees, it makes a lot of sense that they
surprised no one said WhatsApp yet.
Oh yeah, that is the thing that is anyway being used. So it's so obvious that people don't mention WhatsApp. Cool. Which brings me to the point of L&D, right? Training, employee upskilling. Again, we have done a webinar specifically on how to set up L&D for your organization in 2022. So again, as soon as this webinar finishes, right, every attendee will get an email. I will be sending an email. I will, you can definitely look at that webinar itself. But I think, Karthik, we work with Peak Performer on, manager training and such. Rohit, is there something like this at Razorpay or something that you've heard of? So before we move into benefits management, which I think we will take 10 minutes for, because that seems to be, that's the last topic and some people have asked about it.
On the L&D front, what I would say is things have changed. I think earlier there was this practice of having a software, building a course, having course creators come in and do all of this.
Yep.
But today, just get a business subscription for Udemy or a business subscription for Coursera, right? I mean, if you don't need an L&D tool with SCORM compliant courses to launch your L&D program, right? I mean, if you're in a retail industry, look at how you can deliver micro learning on the mobile app, right? You don't need a web application, right? So I think again, if you're a high tech growth startup, you have employees who can take decisions, so give them a subscription based stuff like Udemy and Coursera. If you have more on the other side where it is tailored learning that needs to happen, which is more, I would say, on the job training, right? Not really skilling. So for that, you could consider certain tools where you could build courses and have these things. But again, choose basis what your employees, where your employees fall in, right? That's what I would say. No specific tool suggestion as such for this.
Makes sense. I mean, there are some specific, like we work with Peak Performer, but that's more for upskilling, giving someone skills to become a better manager, right? Correct. So it's not really L&D if you think about it from that sense. And yeah, similarly, we have like subscriptions to Pluralsight and such. Karthik, does this come under benefits? Would you call it benefits, L&D, or you don't really need to differentiate? What are some of the benefits that attendees on this call can sort of think about for their organizations, for their employees?
Yeah, I think in today's world, L&D has become a benefit, right? It's because when you want to upskill, you want to learn, it's almost like it can't really be unless it's an HR training on a compliance and things like that, right? It is all person led, right? You want to do it, that's why you are doing this. And if the company has an access to a tool, then it's definitely a big benefit, right? Because otherwise you would end up spending thousands of rupees, right? And sometimes it's not just the cost, right? It's also the time, right? How do you get the time to invest in this course? Do you have manager alignment? Do you have company alignment, things like that, right? But talking more about the benefits, I think this is one topic where you literally have everything, right? From fitness to OTT to food to your travel to vacation, to kind of work from home setup, to headphones, and pretty much everything is there, right? Like whatever you need to get work done. Some people have even done WeWork subscriptions and things like that. I think this is a topic which really needs to be done with employees feedback, and you kind of do an experimentation here. You try something new and you see if people want to use it, and then you use that as a benefit, right? An example here is we are remote across around 85 cities, 250 people overall. So we said we'll do a co-working subscription with two providers which have offices across India. And very surprising to me, but made sense in hindsight, is less than 10 people ended up using over 2 months, right? And I really thought that was a big benefit. People will want to use it, but no one ended up using it because people are just happy to work from home. They don't want to be tied to a co-working space. It's a cost drain. You can just you might as well use that budget to just get like more infrastructure at your home, or just pick up your own choice, right? You want to go work at a coffee shop, tomorrow you want to work at a different place. You don't want a fixed office per se, right? And people who want are there, but it's a very small portion, right? Just doing something for that 5-10% and calling it as a benefit for the entire org is not really the right move to do, right? So I think that's why benefits and perks need to be done in consultation with employees, and what do people want, where do people spend money, how can people be more productive, right? And just asking these type of questions in a both anonymous, non-anonymous way, getting those feedbacks, and then trying to work with the budget you have, right? I think that's the best way to do any of this, right? So we see vocation being a big most widely used benefit for us, where people want to go live in a resort, like a vacation type of resort, use it for plane tickets, hotel, whatever, right? Given that we are remote, it works out very well for us, and people end up posting photos works as a team bonding, employee engagement activity as well, right? So that is one very widely used benefit for us. And then the next thing is from a work from home setup, right? Most people end up getting a UPS and a Wi-Fi UPS and a desk and a chair, right? These things. And if you are able to see direct ROI in terms of productivity, right? Like internet has almost become the basic necessity, but then we live in India, we want to have a router UPS as well, right? So those and then UPS for the house in terms of power and things like that. So these type of things become really useful for both employee productivity and then employee happiness as well.
Nice. So before we get into the audience questions, I want to sort of close this conversation with again trying to answer one question that came up first, right? And which I think is a great question.
Abbas, before we move there, one point I wanted to make on benefits. I think a lot of times benefits also needn't be with expenditure, right? I mean, you could have great policies which are benefits, right?
Yep.
And that's something that is the HR's job to communicate. Like something like what Karthik mentioned, policies for vacation or things like that. Even having a good education assistance policy is a great benefit. If you can, if you don't need employees to work from your office, saving them commute travel, I would say, is a benefit as well. So I think benefit has to be looked at both ways. It could also be policies. It could also be about things like these, which are just changes that overall improve the org. In Razorpay, we do the same remote working allowance, a little additional component for that. Policies in your payroll can be benefits, right? If you introduce flexible benefits for your employees to save tax, right? That is an additional benefit. Companies like, for example, a lot of people enjoy working at Google and all of that. The reason why that happens is once you enter Google Office, you will end up spending the entire day there, right? Because those are all the things that the company gives, right? I mean, they take care of you. You can get your food, you can get your sleeping pod, you can take your laundry to office. I'm sure they do the laundry and give it to you. And again, these are all experiences. So your policies, I would say, go a long way in administering benefits. Just cash component or that alone is not going to make a lot of headway, in my opinion, because once you give an education assistance loan, for example, for a few of your employees, it actually brings in a lot more trust, a lot more loyalty as well. So these policies are also benefits, in my opinion.
Great. Yeah. So with the context of these factors for choosing HR tools, right? And automation seems to be the number one factor, followed by customization, followed by budget. And the question being, how do you, like, won't it be too difficult to manage? Like if you have one tool for every single activity. And I think that that's a great way to end this webinar. And by the way, we will take the other questions as well, as in conclude the discussion itself. So what is your answer to that, Karthik and Rohit?
Yeah, so I think this is what Rohit had kind of hinted to it, to this earlier. When you have these multiple tools, you probably need one thing to be actually talking to each other, right? By one thing, I mean, like, for example, applicant tracking to HRMS, right? When the person is hired or when the person is offered, that's when you want the data to be transferred, right? Not before that, right? So that's the only, kind of transfer. And then say from a, recognition, perspective, right? You want, the amount which the person has kind of accrued, for this month to be transferred to your, payroll system, right? So I think though, if you're able to, figure out what is the actual integration, then you're able to, connect all of these, most of these tools talk to each other. Some of them talk, through, APIs. Some of them will, talk through like an intermediary, like something like Zapier. Some of them, may you have to resort to like an Excel type of thing, but even that is one activity a month, right? And which is like at the end of the month, export all the recognitions and all the reimbursements you've gotten uploaded to a different, payroll software, right? So you can, always be focused around that. So same thing on attendance, right? So all you need, for your payroll calculation is, okay, does anyone, anyone taken unpaid leave, and that's it, right? So if you think about it, it's only, one thing when most of these, tools actually need to talk to each other. And if you're able to solve that either through APIs or manual imports, then you don't have this integration challenge anymore.
The Abash, the honest answer here is there is no integration required, to be honest. There's only exchange of data required. And that is only employee data, right? The names, literally. That's about it. Like the same user should have access on your performance tool, your payroll tool, if the person is a recruiter, the recruitment tool. So the biggest task actually only becomes keeping that employee in each of the system, and that's a task that happens at onboarding. And most of these systems today now take care of that with APIs, right? So you will be able to integrate directly if you add an employee on, let's say Spring Recruit, and you make an offer. Very soon, actually, we will Razorpay X Payroll itself is going to be integrating with them, right? So with Spring Recruit. So the only thing that needs to be get pushed is once the candidate accepts, the joining has to happen on the payroll software, right? So when we talk of integration, it's only employee data, and APIs are available. As Karthik said, Zapier, all of these are also different, mechanics, I would say, to kind of get this done. But apart from that, there is no real, from your performance management system to payroll, there is no really any linkage. There's no linkage from your L&D that needs to flow into payroll data, or even from recruitment to payroll data, right? I mean, it's only employee access and data that needs happening, in my opinion.
Got it. Now that you mentioned it, Rohit, I thought it would be nice to just put it out there that the Razorpay X Payroll SpringWorks, we are integrating. But if you want to tell us a little bit more, what attendees, like what does it mean for the attendees?
Yeah, so with this integration now, what will essentially happen is there are two products that will get integrate where there will be close handshake. One is the Spring Recruit product, which is the applicant tracking system. So whenever an offer is made and accepted on the ATS side, it can automatically get pushed to the payroll system with all the employee data filled in, the personal details and things like that, right? The other one is the background verification piece, which again, as Karthik mentioned, can happen pre-joining or post-joining. So if it is happening post-joining, then on the Razorpay X payroll system, there will be a mechanism to initiate a BGV process for an employee. Apart from this, I think what we are also excited about is we at Payroll, we take a strong stance of integrating with Slack on most of the things that we do, or even WhatsApp. So I know Engage with, Trivia, both work out of Slack. And one of the things that our customers have been asking us for is tools like these, right? Hey, when are you building an ATS? When are you building something like a pulse survey? So that is where this partnership becomes very important for us, because our customers, as they grow, now they have options to evaluate and integrate with SpringWorks folks and basically use their products as well. And yes, come on board, and we have offers both ways. So we will make sure that
we will tell you about how you can avail this in the email that we will send out. So don't worry about how, what, and all of that.
But the idea is that for all of you to come in and experience what we kind of covered today, right? Like you don't really need one tool to do it all. You could go with these 4-5 tools and get 80-85% of your HR operational work really automated. And that is something that I'm excited about.
Correct. One follow-up question sort of from Ruchi is that wouldn't having different tools for different HR operations increase the cost of operation, right? Like by the way, first of all, there is an assumption here that, one all-in-one tool costs lesser than, singular tools. But if at all that's the case, let's go with the assumption that, individual tools will cost more. What is the argument for going with the other way around, right? Horses for courses.
I think.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I think what I have seen, I kind of hinted at this sometime back, right? The problem with one tool which does everything is, I'm also in sales, so I would also do the same thing. I would have sold everything, right? I would have sold all the 6 modules or 8 modules. So I'm not saying that don't go with an HRMS. Even if you go with an HRMS, can you spread out the implementation, right? You don't need everything on day one, right? And the challenge also with one tool is that if some part of your company or some folks don't like it, now you're kind of stuck with it, right? There is no option to move out, and these are, yearly annual subscription plans that you would have paid for and things like that. So one is one is simply the time it takes to implement these products. It's not worth it. I would rather fail fast trying something and saying this doesn't work than making a decision and then implementing and then finding out that it doesn't work. So if you're able to do a closed access, kind of, most products would agree, if you're able to get it for a small set of folks to test it out, get their feedback on if they like it or not, then yes, you can go for an HRMS. But if you want to move quickly, cater to experiences of different teams individually, then you will get better ROI, even though slightly expensive, but you will be able to get better ROI over a period of time with individual tools, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think all of these tools, Karthik, does in a way, not in a way, like directly impacts employee experience, which is equal to sort of employee retention and all of that, right? So you have to look at it from the long-term view. What does the cost look like? Have you done some sort of analysis for SpringWorks? Just ballpark something. Yeah. Some mental model.
No, I think the question is very, valid. Like, as in most times you end up paying more, right? That's just the, that's just the truth there. But how does the ROI, come up is, you save your offer to joining ratio, you increase your offer to joining ratio, you save a person from resigning, right? So you increase your retention, decrease your churn. You have higher productivity, be it in terms of employee engagement, team bonding, whatever it is, right? So in most cases you're always able to build an ROI case, right? And if you're not, then it's just not what you should do, as simple as that, right? And then you should just rely on the existing tool you have. So there has to be a clear ROI, and that is the case in almost all of these things. And the cost is significantly, I would say significantly higher if you're with like an HRMS, like something like Kika, and then you want an ATS, you want a background verification, you want reimbursements, you want attendance on Slack, you want employee engagement, you want team bonding, right? So it's easily 2x 3x of the current cost you would have, because HRMSs don't really they don't really have multiple plans. Most of them will just tell you, okay, this is what it is per employee per month, and you get everything even if you don't use it, right? But then that's where your ROI comes in, right? So like attendance, for example, almost every single HRMS will have attendance as a tool, but your adoption of that will not be as high as something like RazorPayX, which is inside Slack, because it's easy to apply for a leave and easy for the person to approve, and then most important, everyone else to know that okay, this person is on leave, right? If those things are not connected, then you will, oh, I thought this person is is going to join this meeting, he or she is on leave, I had no idea, right? So those type of things don't happen. So I think employee experience and these relate to the productivity, retention, offer to onboarding, joining ratio, all of those things.
Yeah,
totally. There's a cost of switching, Abash.
Oh yeah.
I mean, once you get into an HRMS ecosystem, you can't switch out of it, right? You will end up, okay, this is what it is.
Right? We will live with all the challenges. Right? And that's not a good situation to be in.
That's not a good situation. But versus if you're methodically implementing tools that fit your business requirements, your adoption is better, your ROI is better, you don't have unnecessary switching costs, and overall you will learn a lot more by doing it this way than if you went big bang.
Correct. There are some more questions, but I think over time we answered them. I think they came in before we already, like there is a question, can you name some OKR tools? I think, Rohit, you mentioned X to 10X. Lattice also does OKR, I know for a fact. What are the best benefits to be offered to employees? I think we discussed a bunch of benefits. There is a specific question suggestion for RazorPayX. So Rohit, how can Rajiv reach out to you or someone from your team? Do you want to, because that's a very, very specific question. So I don't want to, in the interest of time.
I will reach out to Rajiv. Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, I think we have answered all of the questions. Purnima has had her hand raised for a while. Purnima, do you want to ask your question live? I can. Oh, okay. I think the hand is lowered now. Maybe the question was answered already. I think there is one. Yes, Purnima, go ahead. I will unmute you. Yes.
Yeah, hi. So I don't know how to type it out, so that's why I was waiting.
No problem. Please go ahead.
So I have two questions. One is usually when we hire a candidate, we conduct behavior interview, right? Like, and at that time there is a lot of personal bias that comes into picture. And most of the times, like the behavior interview, most of the companies here as a employee count somewhere between maximum of 250. So in those companies, like the behavior interview is also taken by the technical lead himself, like as part of the technical round. So in that case there is a lot of personal bias, and sometimes the candidate that we hire might not be a culture fit candidate. So I'm just asking Karthik directly if there is any chance of including any kind of pi metrics or any kind of gamified behavioral assessment along with the ATS as a first step of an interview, where like then once that is done, we can proceed further for the interview. Is there any chance of that? Yeah, that would be my first question, because that would
Got it.
make life easy. So yeah, just an option. Yeah, that is one thing, because we have tools which can take like Mercer Metal, which has
Correct.
specific
Correct.
tests and everything, but that's not user friendly. That is more like a
Yep.
campus interview kind of tool, where people
Correct.
fill in questions. So that is one thing. In
Correct.
during lateral hiring, that doesn't make much of a sense. So that is one question. And the second question would be, the trends are the frequency in which the trends change is like very high compared to what it was before, because within this 2 years it went from work from home, and hey, like work from home is not kind of like it's people are facing burnout and those kind of stuff. Then it came to hybrid. Now it's like the trend is work from anywhere. So the trends are like constantly changing, and compared to before, now there is a need of like HR process engineers, project managers who constantly work on projects, analyze trends and those kind of stuff. So the change management part of HR has grown rapidly compared to how it was before. Like before, if it the trends used to change like 5 years, 3 years once, now it's like 6 months, 1 year once. So what is your opinion on that? So those are the two questions that I had.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so on the first one, Spring Recruit does integrate with, Do Select, that's like an assessment software. So you can kind of, make Do Select work in terms of, behavior assessment as well, in terms of, you can have your own questions and things like that. So that is an option. I am personally not a fan of, behavior assessments, because I think, it some most people do it because it should be done as part of the interview process, right? But again, we should figure out what is the outcome that we are looking from that interview, right? Are you looking for a yes, no? Are you looking for a culture fit? That can be done with an assessment, right? But and that can be done through, like, we do ask for a Loom video when you're applying to us, right? And that's a good way to just see, from a communication perspective, from a culture perspective, and ask, okay, why do you want to work with us, right? That's also from a culture perspective. You could say, okay, has this person done enough research about us, and wants to really work with us, and what would be your first 10, 15 days, 30 days action plan type of thing. So it depends on the role as well. Not very, very hard to generalize. You can't really ask everyone. You can't really ask an engineer, right? And so it really depends on the role. But yes, there is an option to do an automated skill behavior assessment culture around, depending on the questions you can have. And obviously you can do metal, those type of things also are there. And I think the second question, you're saying trends. Yeah, trends are changing very quickly. There was remote work 2 years ago, and now a lot of companies are going back to office, right? And that's a macro trend. How do you keep yourself aware of those trends? I don't think I really have a good answer there. It's and a lot of these times you're playing catch up to those trends, and I think again understanding why do you need to go follow the trend, right? And I think if you always have a listening ear, to your employees. That's it, right? Not really to the industry, but to the employees, having a suggestion box, having a feedback box, anonymous, right, where people are able to tell. And you will see that, oh, they will say, my friend at this company has this thing in their perk benefit, feature, or they do these town halls, why don't we do it here, right? So, and that's, you can just that is one way for you to get the latest trends, because employees are the best way, and employees are your customers as HR, right? And they are already knowing, because each person is talking to 5-10 people in their network. They're already knowing what is happening, and they are filtering those trends to get you the best trends you should work on. So I think having like a suggestion feedback box really helps, and we've seen very, very good success with that. We have a Slack channel where people are able to ask questions, or give feedback anonymously through engage with. And we're able to see very good things. And sometimes I'm actually given where I am, like I was not even aware that is a problem, or that is a trend, or okay, this is happening. And then we learn from employees, and we look at implementing that. So you take a call that way. So I think that's a way to filter the trends, because otherwise you read blogs and things like that, you will be hit up with a new idea almost every week, right? That's impossible. So change, as Rohit was saying, change management, bringing in a new thing is very, very hard. So, but having employees filter to you is a very good way.
And just to add to that, of course, what Karthik spoke about, listening to employees, but to your point, Purnima, I also get where you're coming from. It almost feels like, oh, am I up to date? And I have done a bunch of conversations with the top CHROs, right? So we have a podcast where we talk to, the head of HR, CHROs at big companies like Google, Netflix. We've had, Godrej, all of these sort of big companies. And I asked this question more of like, what do you think will happen 2 years from now, or where do you think this is going 6 months from now? And you would imagine that these top CHROs would have an answer, right? 100% of the time they say, I don't know. We don't know. We are also figuring out. That's why the term keeps coming up, is great experimentation. They are also figuring out. And of course, if you were to believe people who are selling this content to you on the internet, like whatever it could be in the form of Twitter threads, it could be in the form of thought leadership content on LinkedIn, or you do Google search, you would think that the world has already moved ahead, you have been left behind. But that's rarely the case, not just for HR trends, for many other things. But I think Rohit, you also have a point here.
No, I had a point to make on the first question on the interview stuff.
Yes, please.
I think uh, I think what you should do is look at your interview panel. A lot of the times, the challenges, the bias is what you need to solve. Candidate is going to come in with her behavioral traits, and sure, you're required to assess it. But I think that assessment need not always be with a test, right? As long as your interview panel is in sync, you should be well on your way to hiring the right. I think someone also suggested Amazon bar raiser process. Definitely worth looking into it and how that functions. But I know for a fact that in fast growing tech organizations, it's a problem to get interviewers to take interviews on time. It is a problem to get them to give feedback on time. It is a problem to sometimes even know if they're all asking and hiring for the same bar. So regular catch-ups with your interviewers, having an interviewer training and recognition program, right? If you're doing a lot of hiring, you could even consider building out a simple training, interviewer training. How do you empanel new interviewers to the pool? What are the kind of standard questions? Not a question bank, but at least get them all in one room, get them to arrive at the standard that you're looking to hire at each competency round, and that will actually help you a lot more in nailing down the right fit faster than behavioral assessments and the results of those assessments, because trust me, they can be gamed. And it's not very difficult. I mean, when ATSs started parsing resume and doing some automated shortlisting based on keywords in the resume, people started gaming the resume, right? I could add all the keywords in my resume and it will get shortlisted by a system, right? So look at it from your internal perspective. Get your interviewers on the same page is what I would also recommend. Mute.
Abash, you're on mute.
Abbas, you're on mute.
Sorry. No, I was just saying, we have crossed the time limit. So
Yes.
we will try to answer a couple more questions. Rohit, Karthik, do you have time, or we can just
Yeah.
move this to another room if you, Rohit, what about you?
We can do a couple more questions. I
10,
think.
10 more minutes works?
Sure.
Perfect.
Done.
Perfect. But great to see, 60% retention, and we have crossed the time limit already, right? So 66 people, and I think at the peak we had like 110, 115 odd people. Sure. Manjeet, you want to go next?
You'll have to unmute.
Yeah, I just got it. And I will unmute Gokul as well. Whoever wants to go first. Yes, Gokul,
basically,
please.
my question is very simple. From past 2 months, I have been facing this issue. So basically, right now, we have started that work from office. So we are rolling out most of the employees a lot of increments. So for the month of June, let me give an example. Candidate 1 was given a hike from 5.5 to 8.5. And the hike was started from June 15th. Candidate 2, he was given a hike of from 12 LPA to 20 LPA, and he started on June 17th. Candidate 3, we gave a hike of around 18 to 28, and he started on 28th of June, 20th of June. So the calculations I need that for the first candidate till the first 15 days, her CTC would be 5.5 per annum. From June 15th to June 30th, it would be 8.5 per annum. So is there a thing in Razorpay that this calculation can be done automatically?
Thanks. Thank you so much for asking. Manjeet, right? Sorry.
Gokul.
Gokul, not at the moment. I think we are building this Q2, which is July. So end of July, August is when this is expected. Right now, it is a little bit of a manual calculation, as you rightly pointed out. Aware of this. We are building both effective date, which this is basically your effective date salary. We're building the effective date salary as well as an arrears option as well. Both are coming in Q2.
Yeah, sure. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess Manjeet is not here yet. Okay, Shivam, you can go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So one of the things, as the previous person said, I'm looking for that as well. Second thing is flexible timing. So some of our employees work at different timings, and they're working certain hours at this time and certain hours at certain time. So often right now it's payroll one. It's only certain time you have to check in and check out. There's no check in, check out in a day's time.
Correct.
So, will that be coming? Is it that in roadmap or what?
So right now, again, I apologize for the rest of the folks, is slightly becoming supportive.
And by the way, I will stop recording at this point because there is no point. Yeah.